All right, welcome to Bet the Edge. I'm Jay Croucher here with Drew Dinsick. We're going to tackle the NFL again today. We're going to talk about key injuries that matter coming out of week one, do some stock up, stock down, and then we'll talk about offensive rookie of the year, which I think has one price that is very wrong. So we'll jump into that at the end, but let's start off with some of the injury news. The Seahawks, who were probably the biggest disaster of Sunday. Charles Cross left the game with a toe injury. Abraham Lucas also left the game with a knee injury, did not return. Tyler Lockett was evaluated for concussion and did not return as a result of that, as a result of getting blown out at home by 17 points against the Rams. The Seahawks, who I think were 2.5-point dogs at one point to the Lions, are now 6-point dogs in Detroit. Total is 49. What do you make of the Seahawks, Drew, who are now in a division with a minus 600 favorite? Who isn't them?
Yeah, you're telling on yourself that you didn't stay up and watch Sunday Night Football and see the Giants, or watch the Bears tape yet, because the Bears also in the doghouse after week one. But no, in terms of you're downgrading a team because of some specific issues that are not just opponent related, but are like fundamental problems with the way they've rostered this team. The Seahawks are at the top of my list of downgrades. And the points you're making about the offensive line injuries are massive, because the way that this offensive line was rostered was strong young tackles that could take a step forward in year two, and really questionable question marks and or inexperience and or maybe not good talented players on the interior of the offensive line. And so the tackles were really going to have to do their job well, and then you were going to have to kind of hope that your young guys inside come get better quickly. Help them out with some running back run blocking and stuff like that. Why this is especially impactful is Geno Smith struggles mightily when he is facing interior pressure. His go-to move is pressure's coming, rather than roll out, rather than try to extend plays, rather than try to use his legs. He throws a ball that's uncatchable to the sidelines. And I thought that in large part, was responsible for Seattle kind of unraveling on, in the game against the Rams in the second half when they were in comeback mode. As you look at this particular matchup, do the Lions have interior defensive linemen that can make the same sort of impact as Aaron Donald? No, they do not. They have they have Hutchinson, who by all accounts is progressing well, one of the better pass rushers as we got to the end of the season last year, and showed some pop in week one opener against the Chiefs. He could be the difference maker in this game. But I think realistically, as you look at this offense, you count the injuries now that are impacting the offensive line, and you look at how this might be kind of now bottom 5 unit with a quarterback who doesn't play well under pressure. And I think this is a pretty clear you have to pass on the Seahawks at this point. Seahawks also had virtually no hope of getting home in the pass rush against Matthew Stafford. They gave him all the time in the world to operate in that pocket and pick them apart with his team of up and coming wide receivers. Well, this was going to be tough for them to get pressure anyway, because Detroit's offensive line is amazing. And now you combine that with the fact that you're going to be giving them extra time, and they have a strong skill position group in that Detroit locker room. And this could get out of hand pretty quickly. So I want to try to make a case for an over here, because I think Seattle could do a little bit more if Cross is in particular is good to go. But Cross and Lucas were really meaningful players, and them out of the game now, I think has the Seahawks basically dead to rights for the time being.
Yes, I would agree. And I think the main point that you made was about the Seahawks, just the total inability to have a pass rush. They didn't really have one last year either, but to not be able to get any pressure on Stafford with that offensive line is a massive red flag. And now going up against Detroit, who have a stellar offensive line. Detroit's team total is 27.5, which is pretty high, but at the same time, like, they scored 45 against Seattle last year, and I think the Lions are even better now. So it's kind of hard to see how the Lions don't get to 28 off extended rest going up against the Seahawks team, which looks like just a disaster, frankly. And I think we knew that the bottom could fall out for Geno Smith coming off of last year, particularly after week 5. He just wasn't very good. He was fine, but he wasn't the guy that he was in the first 5 weeks of the season. The turnover-worthy plays really crept back in. So yeah, not a good start for the Seahawks.
Is it too late to go and retroactively take away Geno Smith's Comeback Player of the Year award? Because I already have I've gotten word that we can take away Brian Dable's Coach of the Year award.
I got a few texts about that. How did the Niners look week 1? How did the Giants look week 1? I don't know. I think honestly, last night, we're recording Monday. I think the Sunday night game, I think it only strengthened Dable's Coach of the Year case, to be honest, last year when you see what he's working with. But yeah, anyway, good to bring that up again, Drew. Thank you very much. Let's go to Baltimore. Also, Baltimore, I don't know what's wrong with this team. It's just every single year they're afflicted by injuries. J.K. Dobbins is done for the season with a torn Achilles. Tyler Linderbaum has a left ankle. Ronnie Stanley has got a knee. Marcus Williams seems like he tore his pec. Marlon Humphrey's out at the moment. Looks like he might be okay to go. And as a result, the line has crept up, where now the Bengals are 3.5-point favorites home to Baltimore in an early must-win game for Cincinnati. The total is 46.5. I think, look, all these injuries are bad and they're all important players. But to me, maybe the biggest concern about Baltimore was Lamar Jackson was terrible against Houston. And it was a game that was set up for him to do whatever he wanted against the Texans defense that is definitely not elite. And look, it's week 1. New offense under Todd Monken, banged up, people coming in and out. You know, he's playing with these new receivers in Flowers and Odell Beckham, and Mark Andrews isn't there. So look, certainly not the line through Lamar Jackson, but that was a concern. And when you add that to, you know, all these injuries, I think the Ravens, the Ravens might be the 3rd best team in that division right now. Certainly the market thinks the Bengals are better on neutral. I think the Browns might be, Deshaun looked pretty bad, but that defense looked fierce. So I don't know. That AFC North is just completely wide open, except probably for our Steelers. But what do you make of the Ravens?
Two days ago, this was the best division in sports, and now I completely agree with your sentiment. These are all huge question marks, all these teams, and the injuries to the Ravens are massive. And you know what's funny, Jay? If you go back in time to what was it, right around the Super Bowl, I feel like, or maybe just after, they had all 1,300 players in the NFL participate in that survey where they conducted and then released the player team report cards. And what was funny is one of the categories was strength coaches. And well, you know, you look at the top, and basically every team in the league was some variation between A+ and A-, except for the Ravens, which got an F- in strength coaches. I don't know what it is about the players, but they feel like there's something that they are not doing correctly to get these guys, you know, bodies ready for the, the brutal campaign that is an NFL regular season. And so the fact that we're already here after week 1 is just massive amount of confirmation bias that they have not fixed whatever the problems are with how they get these guys right and get them ready. And so, you know, the litany of injuries is concerning, and these are impactful guys. Like Linderbaum mattered. If he's out for, and I'm hearing he's not expected to go this week against Cincinnati, that's a problem because their backup center is completely untested, and he doesn't have any chemistry with Lamar Jackson in terms of getting the snap off right. And if you didn't already know, Lamar Jackson likes playing from the shotgun. Which also, you know, snapping the ball, you know, and getting that fluidity is going to matter a bit. I think this basically makes for a really easy opportunity to either go against the Ravens, although you're not getting a great price, or to shoot for their team total under on the basis of just the offensive line not being able to prevent pressure here. The Dobbins injury, similarly, it doesn't move the needle for me, you know, in a big way. They have enough redundancy there, and you know, his specific skill set, while good, was not game breaking. Marcus Williams, I think, matters a ton. You're now looking like you have sort of a cluster injury going on in the secondary, and you know what team I would not want to see on my schedule if I had a secondary cluster injury? It would be the Cincinnati Bengals. So this is not to say that all of a sudden the Bengals are going to be some awesome fluid machine offensively, but they set up pretty clearly as the backup candidates in a big way here. And you know, Mike McDonald did some nice things with his scheme against the Bengals last year and really kind of turned around what was a pretty lopsided head-to-head in the Joe Burrow era. But with the weapons that he's got going here, it's basically Roquan Smith and, you know, a number of guys who are battling here. I don't know how they create pressure. they're going to be okay against the run, but I could see the Bengals getting right in the passing game pretty clearly.
Yeah, and looking at the AFC North odds at the moment, I mean, it's very clustered. Basically, there's nothing between Baltimore, Cincinnati, and Cleveland. Pittsburgh plus 750, which is depressing. But I think if I had to pick one team of that cluster, I think I would still take Cincinnati, just because Burrow and no preseason, like they were almost so bad that you feel better about them because it was such an outlier against Cleveland. So I think the Bengals ultimately will be fine. Certainly the market early in the week, but
Jay, you just convinced me.
Yeah,
3.5 isn't an all universe price. I'm splitting my stick. Half of it on 3.5, half of it on Bengals to win the AFC North. That's what we do.
Yep. Okay, I like it. Yep, I think the Bengals will win that division. Plus 200 is the price for the North. A team that's not going to win their division, almost certainly, the Houston Texans, who don't really have an offensive line at the moment. Jalen Petrie, I always mess up that name. He suffered a bruised lung and had to go to local hospital. Hassan Ridgeway left the game with a calf injury and not returned. They're still 1.5-point favorites. Home to Indianapolis. The total is a lowly 40. I think the bigger problem, honestly, is that CJ Stroud looked terrible against Baltimore. He's playing hero ball, throwing it up into triple coverage. Just didn't look right in a way that I actually thought Anthony Richardson did look right. Anthony Richardson looked like an NFL quarterback, which is a little bit of a problem when the whole book on Richardson was supposed to be that he was unproven and that Stroud and Young were supposed to be more pro-ready. I think it's might be an Ohio State thing where it's just so easy for those guys. We saw how accurate Justin Fields was in college. Then he gets to the pros, not quite as easy anymore. CJ Stroud as well. He looked completely lost. And look, it's 1 week. Not going to write the book on CJ Stroud, but not great for the Texans. And I kind of might lean Colts at the current price. But I mean, what do you think?
Yeah, we agree. Colts are pass. And I think we put the Colts right now on a clear tier 2 in the AFC South.
Yep.
Jags are tier 1. And by the way, Jags now have a win against their most difficult opponent on the road in division. So that's consequential. And I think the Colts can get this win. I think minus the getting confirmation about Anthony Richardson health matters. Texans offensive line is a huge issue. The Ravens don't really have much of a pass rush to really write home about. It's a bunch of guys who are good, not great. DeForest Buckner is great. And he was a disruptor against the Jacksonville Jaguars. I think he will be even more of a factor in this game against the Texans. Not exactly sure what kind of home field advantage Texas could muster in this one. So Colts look like a pretty fun play. And I was going to pass on Colts games this year, man, but there's not a lot I love in week 2. I think Colts should be closer to 2.5, though.
Yeah, Shane Steichen might be the real deal. Let's talk about the Pittsburgh Steelers, who did not look like the real deal in getting stomped by San Francisco. Cam Hayward, he left the game with a groin injury. Looks like he's going to be out about a month. Deontay Johnson also dealing with a hamstring. Just a 0 out of 10 day for Pittsburgh. There's basically nothing to take out of that outside of TJ Watt looking really good, and they are now 1.5-point dogs at home to Cleveland. So I guess coming out of the Cleveland game in particular, like how do you treat them? How do you treat this matchup now, given that both teams were kind of wild outliers in different directions in week 1?
Well, from an injury tracking standpoint, it's important to note that Browns starting tackle Jack Conklin will be out. He's ACL, MCL confirmed. And one of the problems with Deshaun Watson, and one of the reasons that you're like, this guy still isn't learning, is he was holding onto the ball for an obscenely long time. And if you now take away an important part of your blindside tackle here, or if you're taking away a key tackle up against a pass rush that has TJ Watt, then he's going to be under duress a lot in this game. And I think the market reaction to the news about the Steelers in general, their offense being a downgrade based on what we saw against the Niners, their matchup against the Browns, who Browns defense you have to upgrade, I think, a little bit. And a lot of people already have. A lot of people went into that game thinking this Browns defense is absolutely a top 10 unit, no doubt about it. They are all confirming those priors. That unit is getting upgraded now broadly. I think it sets up for what we've seen, which is this has been one-way action to the under. This could be an ugly game. If Kenny Pickett finds a way to get a win, then that helps our Bengals AFC North future, I suppose. But I think realistically, this is you go into this game trying to get Kenny Pickett to play a very safe, mistake-free type of football. You try to get his ball out of his hands more quickly. You mentioned Deontay Johnson is an injury that absolutely has to be tracked. He could make a difference in this game if he's healthy. Pat Freiermuth also got banged up, and he's been a pretty important safety blanket for Kenny Pickett. So both offenses, I think you have to downgrade somewhat, and then Cam Hayward matters. So he's got to be a downgrade for the defense for the Steelers. So I understand why the line is where it is. It makes sense to me, and I think this total probably closes in the 38 range.
Yeah. On the Cleveland defense quickly, it baffles me sometimes how it just seems like certain NFL coaches in certain situations just make just objectively the wrong decision and just don't pick up the low-hanging fruit. And there's so much money, obviously, in the sport that you think, like stuff like when Micah Parsons wasn't being used as an edge rusher, just made no sense whatsoever. Myles Garrett just lining up the same spot every single time, even if he was going up against an elite tackle. Why don't you just move him over the guard as Schwartz did on the weekend? And he was completely dominant. Like, why didn't this happen last year? Completely baffling. But yeah,
I'm so glad you brought that point up, man. Garrett is the entire framework of football is getting the ball out of your hand quicker if you're the quarterback. That de-emphasizes being able to come off of the edge and really make as much of a difference. He was underutilized there, and that was a noteworthy and important adjustment on behalf of Schwartz. So hat tip to him.
Yep, indeed. Okay, before we get to some stock up, stock down, this Sunday night, AFC East rivals do battle in South Beach when Mac Jones, Bill Belichick, and the Patriots face Tua Tagovailoa and the Dolphins. Coverage starts at 7 p.m. Eastern, only on NBC and Peacock. See if Tyreek Hill can go for another 200 yards. Stock up, stock down. Cowboys, Giants. Obviously, that was pretty big. The takeaway from week one that the Cowboys look like an absolute force. The Giants look like a complete debacle. Daniel Jones, who reports out of camp weren't great about Jones in his preseason, and then he was diabolical against the Cowboys. So look, no one really thought that the Giants were going to be a Super Bowl contender. Maybe they could be a fringe playoff team again. But I think the Cowboys are the more interesting side of this, where I think there is a thought that they could just be the best team in the NFC. And it's never really made sense to me why they were plus 195 to win the NFC East and the Eagles were red odds. That has come together a little bit. Don't want to overreact to 1 week, but what do you make of the Cowboys now?
I can't believe we can still get plus money on this, guys. I didn't think it was going to flip to Cowboys favorite, but I did think that this was going to narrow more. And I guess if Keyshawn Butte, if he gets his second foot down, yep, and then the Patriots score a touchdown and win that game instead of losing by 5, then that would have seen a more violent reaction in this market. But the Cowboys absolutely deserve stock up in a lot of ways. They showed you that they are not just one of the more complete teams in terms of roster build, but they actually have some pretty nice redundancy as they went into that game with a number of their players in the offensive line not 100%, and yet they still were able to absolutely stack up and manhandle, in fact, a defensive line that has some absolute blue chip players on it. Now, were the conditions a factor? Maybe. Were they beneficiaries of game state? Yes. Did they have, if they don't get a special teams touchdown early there and, the Giants get on the board, with the clean field goal instead of spotting the Cowboys, 6 points, maybe it's a different type of game. But I think realistically, the Cowboys have shown you that they need to be in your top 3 in terms of power ranking. And I think currently at least have to be ahead of the Eagles. Now, the Eagles have, they are paying a little bit of a price of facing a very, very good defense, right? Some of the kind of, at least what the market is telling you about the way they're expecting them to perform against a weak defense in Minnesota. Maybe there's a little bit of a buy low opportunity on this Eagles team to score into the 30s for the next handful of weeks, because they're still very, very good. But I think the Eagles defense showed you that they are vulnerable over the middle of the field, a concept that a lot of people talked about in the preseason. What's going on? Yeah, what are you going to do at off-ball linebacker? What are you going to do at safety? Well, the Patriots showed you that if you have, they have some slow and kind of not game breakers in their skill position group, and they were able to make some hay against the interior of that Eagles defense. I think that sets them up pretty well for if you can take the defensive line out of the equation when you face this Eagles team, you're going to be able to score on them, and it could be pretty serious. So for that reason and that reason alone, I think you have to think that the Cowboys are going to get the better of them potentially in week 9 if they're both at current health and strength. I do see a lot of I see ceiling and even more upside in the Cowboys even than what we saw in a 40-0 win. Like there were times in that game where I was like, they could have done that a little bit better, right? Like I don't think that's the best we'll see of the Cowboys all season.
No, and Dak missed CeeDee Lamb wide open in the end zone.
That was the one I was thinking of.
Dak was fine. Again, Dak he always leaves you a little bit cold. He's very, very good, but there's always like a little bit of a gnawing feeling that Dak maybe just isn't quite the guy. But I think he's good enough for this team to win the Super Bowl. And yeah, I mean, the Eagles, we'll see. We'll see what they look like against Minnesota. They'd want to put up 30 in that game to get back on track because they did not look good at all against the Patriots. And it's funny, we're talking on Fantasy Football Happy Hour today about how almost more concerned about the Eagles offense than the Bengals offense, just because like there's just no way that Burrow, Chase, Higgins, there's no way that team can fail. Like Joe Burrow is not going to fail with so long as he's healthy. With Hurts, Hurts has only been really good for 1 year, and he's in a unique offense. And I think there's a lot more chance that Jalen Hurts could be solved, at least to some degree, than you can solve for Joe Burrow. But yeah, we'll see. I think the Eagles will be fine. I think the Cowboys are very, very good, and I would slightly lean Cowboys there. I think that is the best defense in the NFL right now. Bengals, we largely touched upon. I mean, I think they have to be somewhat stocked down, but at the same time, weird conditions. I think a really unique game plan as well from Schwartz and the Browns defense. Bill Barnwell wrote really well on this in an article on ESPN about how they kind of forced Burrow into basically like low percentage but high reward throws for the Bengals offense, and he just didn't connect. And in the conditions, certainly helped that. And then they were able to get pressure with Garrett kind of wrecking the game a little bit. So I'm not too concerned about the Bengals. Certainly the market thinks that they'll be fine, having them as 3.5-point favorites over the Ravens. And yeah, we like them to win the AFC North. Let's close out quickly on the Rams. So the Niners, I think the Niners opened 7-point favorites over the Rams. That's up to 8.5 already. I think the thing here is that Stafford is better than Goff, but Stafford, like Goff, who were traded for each other, if you keep Matthew Stafford clean, like most quarterbacks, then he becomes a monster. And if you put him under duress, he's not nearly as good. And he was kept completely clean against Seattle, and that Seattle defense was a complete mess. And so I think that the Rams offense looked a lot better than it will going up against Nick Bosa and co. So look, I'm not buying the Rams as, a potential feel-good 8-9 type of team. I don't think there's the talent there still. Not much has changed for me. I think it's more reflection on how bad Seattle were. But what do you make of the Rams now?
Yeah, I think you have to upgrade their offense to at least league average, if not better than an average. And I think they're matchup dependent, whether you bet on or against this team now, because I still think the defense has the potential to get exposed. If you can put two hats on Aaron Donald, if your quarterback can keep his cool as Aaron Donald is coming up the middle at 100 miles an hour, then you still can find a lot of places to attack the secondary. But the offense is the key, and I think you nailed it. If you are getting pressure on Burrow, if you're getting pressure on Stafford, that is without blitzing, that's huge key. then you can make this offense look bad. You can force him into bad decisions. You can create turnovers. And he seems to be a guy that when things are going great, he is just firing with absolute confidence. And when things start to go poorly, he kind of compounds bad decisions with more bad decisions. So I think against a team like the Niners, where they can generate pressure without blitzing, Stafford and the Rams are drawing dead to a degree. But when they go up against teams where they're only getting pressure by blitzing, so I'm looking at like the Vikings or the Bucks, or there's just the teams with a relatively high blitz rate. Rams can control the game state. Rams can play from ahead potentially, and Rams can win those games. So as long as Stafford is healthy, I think that's the rubric by which you approach their handicap.
Yep, Rams have got San Francisco, and then at Cincy, at Indy, home Philly, home Arizona. So some chance they could be 3-3 after 6 weeks. But I'm not buying into this team as a playoff contender or anything like that. All right, before we get to Offensive Rookie of the Year, a reminder that Bet the Edge isn't the only show every weekday during the NFL season. You can also check out the Fantasy Football Happy Hour with Matthew Berry, Connor Rogers, and myself. It airs live on Peacock at noon, re-airs at 4 p.m. Eastern, and is available on our NFL on NBC Sports YouTube channel, as well as wherever you listen to your podcasts. All right. Offensive Rookie of the Year. We'll talk about all these awards markets as we go, but I think the best bet in any awards market today, after the first kind of reprice after sustained game action, is Zay Flowers, who is plus 1,200. I think if you shop around as well, you can find some 14-1, some 15-1. So Zay Flowers had 48% target share against the Texans. So he had 10 targets in a game that they won 25-9 and didn't really need to throw in the second half. I think he looks like he's going to be wide receiver 1 in Baltimore, a team that is going to throw more under Todd Monken. Only 2 designed runs for Lamar Jackson yesterday, which is telling. Now, there wasn't any Mark Andrews. There also wasn't really any incentive to throw. So I think that kind of cancels out. And I think that, we didn't really know who out of this wide receiver class was going to emerge as the guy. Well, Quentin Johnston, not good. Jordan Addison scored a touchdown. He will be in the mix somewhat, but that team had a really bad loss. Jackson Smith and Jigba, that team was a disaster. So look, can't be putting lines through anyone or declaring anyone after one game, but I think Zay Flowers should probably be third favorite in this market behind Bijan and Anthony Richardson. What do you think?
Yeah, I think there's a tier 1 of candidates. And it's, in my opinion, Richardson probably needs to be higher than Robinson just because of the potential volume disparity. Robinson's not going to get maybe what the high upside people thought this year. Meanwhile, Richardson has pop and is further ahead than any of us really, I think, we're willing to kind of conceive. Zay Flowers belongs in that tier for all the reasons you said. He's very good on top of being wide receiver 1 for an offense that is going to pass more this season. It. And if you've already heard what we said about the Ravens, we don't think that they're necessarily going to run away with this division. They're not going to run away with many games. There's going to be a lot more games in their schedule where they're at a negative game state and they're going to be passing more aggressively. So even when Andrews comes back into the fold, I don't think that takes a ton away from Flowers in terms of target potential. And I think, if he is the, if he can continue to make some of the kind of standout pop plays in the passing game for a good offense, then he would be a guy that is going to get some serious attention. So those are my 3 candidates right now. And I think everybody is on a second tier that needs a little bit of luck, needs a little bit of help, and or could emerge if there's an injury.
Yep. So right now, Bijan's plus 225, Richardson's plus 500, Jahmyr Gibbs plus 800, Bryce Young plus 900, CJ Stroud's plus 1,400. I know he looked terrible. That's pretty big. His price has basically doubled after one bad game. Not really interested, but still, that's just one to keep an eye on as a quarterback who has the role entrenched. Bryce Young just has no weapons, and I'm not really sure how he's going to put up volume stats or win a lot of games with that team. Bijan's a weird one. I still think he should be favorite. Anthony Richardson, who he looked the part against the Jags. He had a 49 PFF grade, which is a little concerning. I would have thought, just eyeballing, I would have thought, I don't know, 60 or whatever, but he didn't grade out well there. And his stat line was okay, not great, but certainly he looked the best of the three quarterbacks. And we'll see. I mean, he might get Jonathan Taylor back in week 5, which I think would help him. And he does have Michael Pittman. But yeah, I think Bijan, the problem is Tyler Algier is really good and was really good last year and has picked right up. And so it's not a situation where, you have the clear better running back who needs to supplant the vet who's bad. Like Algier is good and he needs to get run, and Bijan's going to be used a lot more as a pass catcher. So I still think he's going to get enough volume just because Desmond Ridder is terrible, it seems like. And so they're going to be running the ball and dumping off to Bijan a ton. So I still feel the best about Bijan, but Richardson would be next for me, and then Zay Flowers third. We'll see with Jahmyr Gibbs. I think I am more worried about David Montgomery blocking off Jahmyr Gibbs than I am Tyler Algier blocking off Bijan Robinson. I think Bijan, Tyler Algier might be 50-50 split of carries, and then Bijan will get a lot more receiving work. I think Montgomery is going to get more carries than Gibbs. And that's a problem for Jahmyr Gibbs and his OROY campaign. Anyone else who's interesting to you?
No, I think I'll just push back a little bit on your Richardson commentary. They got an easy schedule. They finish with a bunch of games he can win, which I think is a huge factor. We've talked about this a bunch in the preseason, but the Colts' final frame is winnable games. So he could get to 6 wins, 7 wins. And at that point, he needs a stat line that looks like Cam Newton's Rookie of the Year campaign. Cam Newton, if you don't remember, scored 14 touchdowns on the ground for that Panthers team. His passing statistics, his passing grades were pedestrian that year. He needed a lot of growth as a passer, but he was so dynamic in terms of just scoring points on the ground that, he was the easy choice. And I think the way Richardson is built, he could threaten and or surpass that 14 touchdown rookie, rushing touchdown mark that Cam Newton set.
Yep, no, certainly he's right there. I do worry a little bit about him staying healthy for a full season as well. He's already banged up, and
young guy.
So that's a little bit of a concern. Look, Bijan Robinson plays running back, which is the position with the most attrition. So that's half the award. I mean, Breece Hall would have won going away last year had he stayed healthy. So there's a huge luck element to that. But I agree. I think we're in agreement that the top 3, Bijan, Richardson, and Zay Flowers. All right, we are done. Don't forget to check out NBCsports.com for more information to help you with your wagers. If you're listening to us in podcast form, please don't forget to rate and subscribe. And a reminder to find all your favorite NBC Sports shows on Amazon Music. Just head to amazon.com/NBC Sports. From Jay Croucher and Drew Dinsick, we'll see you tomorrow.